Welcome to Exploring the World of English Language and Literature. Here's the Salim, and today we are going to start a new series of lecture, which is the literary theories. And today there is the first lecture, and which is we will discuss about the introduction to literary theories. We will make a short overview on the literary theories. So, first of all, we shall give a brief introduction to literary theories and how we will define literary theories, and then we can discuss about the difference between literary theories and criticism. Then the another topic that we will discuss about the what are the core concern of literary theories in a general way. That although we know that there are the different theories, there are the different approaches as well for evaluating, for judging a literary piece of work. But what are the common grounds? What are the crisscross where all these theories meet? What is the common concern of these theories? And then we will discuss about the more important thing, which is the different literary approaches. For example, there are the biographical approaches, there are the psychoanalytical approaches, there are the textual approaches and structural approaches, post-structural approaches. There are the Marxist approaches are there. So there are the broad different interpretations, that different approaches that we will discuss about. So in the lecture one, we shall discuss about the introduction of literary theories. So the first thing that is important to discuss is about the introduction, that what's the basic definition of literary theories. In a more simple way, literary theories are basically analyzing and evaluating a piece of work from different perspective. It is a broader area of studies that there is a link of literature with different fields, as like psychology, as like sociology, as like ecology is the more recently, and then like the philosophy as well, linguistics as well. So literary theories is wider in its scope. For example, when we study a literary work, we will focus on the close reading of a text, the different meanings, underlying structures as well. They're just like the symbols, signs are there. Beside these textual reading, we have the or something outside the text, for example, as like you can say that the cultural interpretations, the moral interpretation are there. So these are all the core concern of literary theories. Then the another thing that is very important, that is very crucial to understand, that what's the difference between literary theories and criticism. In a more broader way, when we're talking about literary criticism, it's a more classical, it's a more ancient, oldest discipline as well, and it is very closely linked with literature. So, if we take a glance on the Western literary criticism, we will see that it starts from Aristotle and ends toward the T.S. Eliot. There are the different classical names as well. Aristotle, Plato, and then we have just like the Dryden, we have Dr. Johnson, William Wordsworth, Coleridge, Matthew Arnold, and then we have just like the T.S. Eliot in the more recent time. So all of these critics have evaluated, have judged a literary piece of work in their own way, from their own lenses as well. Some are romantic in their temperament, and some are classics in their temperament. So, for example, when we see that the literary interpretation from the point of view of Dryden and the point of view of Johnson and Matthew Arnold as well, so we see that there is a classical focus, classical, and they preach about the classical and morality as well, the formal aspects of a language in literature. But on the other hand, when we're talking about the romantics, as like the Wordsworth and Coleridge and Walter Pater, so you see that there's a strain of romanticism. They're more focusing on the imagination. They're more focusing on fancy as well. They're more focusing on the aesthetic purpose of literature. So literary criticism, when we will make a comparison of literary criticism with a literary theory, so we see that the literary theory also evaluate a literary piece of work, but as compared to literary criticism, we can say that it was far broader than literary criticism, because in literary theory we link literature with the other disciplines as well. For instance, we can see that it was psychology, it was sociology, and different way, as like in more recently that ecology, linguistics as well. There was the philosophy as well. So in literary in theory is far greater and far advanced than literary criticism in its book, because as we see that literary criticism was just the personal reflection of some writers, and they have invented some terms. It was nothing as compared to the literary theory. The another thing then we are discussing about the literary criticism theory is that what are, although there are the different theories that we have, it was started from the new criticism, formalism, structuralism, and post-structuralism, Marxism as well. They all of have the different way of interpreting of literature. So when we're talking about so what are their common interests for evaluating a piece of work? They, for example, they focus on the meaning in a literary piece of work. They focus on the nature of truth, and there are different layers of the language, and there are the context and the social and cultural interpretations. Another important thing that is very important to discuss the different approaches in literary theories. So there are just like the biographical approaches that we have to evaluate a literary work according to author's biography, that according to the life of author. For example, there is a very important text that we have discussed, like the Virginia Woolf, the To the Lighthouse, or we can evaluate with the personal experiences of the writer. And James Joyce's work is the portrait of author as a young man. So it was actually his own biography. Then there are the different textual approaches and new criticism that was started in, we can say that in the 20th century. So it was focusing on the text as well. The text is all, each and everything in literature. Then there are just like the structural and the post-structural approaches, which were the further modification of the new criticism and the Russian formalism. And then we have just like the Marxist approaches, and we see the literature from economical perspective, and then new historicism and cultural materialism, which were the new, which were the advanced form of Marxism. Then there are psychological approaches, the works of the Freud and Lacan. They focus on the inner feelings of mind as well, the inner structures of mind, and how we can perceive the things. Then we have the post-colonial approach, which is the more important area of studies as well. And then, so the eco-criticism in the modern era. Now we will make a historical overview of literary theories that, as we know, that they has been started in the very start of the 20th century. So in the very start, we have just like in the 1920s to 1950s, the important theories were the new criticism, and then we have the modernism, and then Chicago school, and as well the Frankfurt schools of the theories. So the two more important theories that we have discussed is that the new criticism and the modernism. So when we're talking about the two approaches, the Russian formalism and the new criticism, which were also the form of the modernism that we are discussing, so they are more focusing on the text. The core concern was the text, that there is nothing, we can say that, outside the text. And the important practitioners in the new criticism were John Crown Ransom, who introduced the term, the new criticism. Then we have the Clean Brook is there, then I. Richard, and in modernism that I like T.S. Eliot is over there. So they were the more important new critics as well. But when we're talking about the 1950s, So we have discussed about the important theories that have been started, like the structuralism, which were also the modified form of the new criticism is there. As important like the Ferdinand de Saussure is there, Claude Lévi-Strauss and Roland Barthes, they are all focusing on the different underlying structures within a language. And then we have the archetypes of the mid criticism are also there. But when talking about the 1960s to 70s, there are difference of the new theories that emerged during the decades of 1960s and 70s. We have just like the feminism is what a very important theory that has been started over there, which focusing on the female rights as well. Then we have discussed about the theories of post-colonialism as like the Edward Said and Jacques Lacan and Barthes as well, psychoanalytical theory that we had the Freud was the chief practitioner of the psychoanalytical theory, and even Marxism is there. And then the postmodernism, which was a reaction of the modernism, and then we have the cultural studies as there, and the reader response criticism, and then we have the Frankfurt School is there. And in 1980s, we saw the opening of the new historicism, and then in 1990s again there was the post-colonialism and the Frankfurt School and eco-criticism, which was comes in 1990s.